He is, and all afternoon he was taking measures to save taxpayer money by vetoing bills that were just passed by legislators here a couple of weeks ago. And this could just be the start of some cuts in state spending because of the impact of COVID-19. Earlier this afternoon, the governor vetoed more than 147. Those bills will result in about $235 million.
Under normal circumstances, I would not veto bills that are good policy and smart investments over time. But simply put, these are not normal times. And we cannot sleepwalk our way through this fiscal crisis that the state of Washington will be in the months and perhaps years to come.
Some of the programs that will not be getting funded because of this week's action, a move that would have hired 370 new school counselors. Also, the Office of Equity was going to be created. That's all been scrapped right now. Today, this week, we're talking about saving hundreds of millions of dollars. The governor says when lawmakers return here next January, they may be talking about trying to find savings of several billion dollars. He says it all comes down to how well the state does with the coronavirus. He says if people continue to stay home and stay healthy, then the economy should get healthier quicker. Live in Olympia, Drew Mickelson, King 5 News.